Grandma, please, I can't breathe here. Save me from this nightmare. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My grandson's voice, usually so full of life, now trembled with fear. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. Jonah? What's wrong, sweetheart? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. I can't talk now. She might hear me. Please, Grandma, just come get me. The line went dead. I stared at the silent phone, my mind reeling. What nightmare was Jonah living in? And who was this she he was so afraid of? My name is Marlo, and I thought I knew my family. I was wrong. I grabbed my car keys, my hands shaking. The drive to Eli and Lila's house felt like an eternity. My son and his wife had always seemed like the perfect couple, doting parents to my precious grandson. But Jonah's desperate plea echoed in my ears, shattering that illusion. As I pulled into their driveway, I saw Lila's silhouette in the window. She was pacing, gesticulating wildly. I couldn't hear her words, but her body language screamed anger. I marched up to the front door and rang the bell. Silence fell inside the house. After a moment, Lila opened the door, her face a mask of forced pleasantness. "Marlo," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "What a surprise. We weren't expecting you." I pushed past her into the house. "Where's Jonah?" Lila's smile faltered for a second. "He's in his room, doing homework. You know how busy he is with school." "I'd like to see him," I said, already heading for the stairs. Lila's hand shot out, gripping my arm. "Now's not a good time, Marlo. Why don't you come back this weekend?" I yanked my arm free. "I'm here now, Lila. And I'm seeing my grandson." As I climbed the stairs, I heard Lila hiss, "Eli, your mother's here." I found Jonah's door closed. I knocked softly. "Jonah? It's Grandma." The door cracked open, and Jonah's pale face appeared. His eyes were red-rimmed, his cheeks tear-stained. Without a word, he threw himself into my arms. "Oh, sweetheart," I murmured, holding him tight. "What's going on?" Before Jonah could answer, Eli appeared in the hallway. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I looked at my son, over Jonah's head. "I got a call. Jonah needed me." Eli's brow furrowed. "A call? Jonah, you know you're not supposed to use your phone during study time." Jonah stiffened in my arms. I felt a surge of protectiveness. "Eli, something's wrong here." Jonah called me in tears, begging for help. "Don't be ridiculous, Mom," Eli said, but I saw uncertainty flicker in his eyes. "Everything's fine, right, Jonah?" Jonah pulled away from me, his eyes darting between his father and me. I just... Lila appeared behind Eli, her face a storm cloud. "Jonah, go finish your homework." "Marlo, I think it's time for you to leave." I stood my ground. "I'm not going anywhere until I know what's going on in this house." Lila's eyes narrowed. "Oh, Marlo, here to save the day again? Maybe if you spent less time meddling, you'd see things clearly." The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. I looked at Jonah, saw the fear in his eyes, and made a decision. Whatever was happening in this house, I was going to get to the bottom of it. My grandson needed me, and I wouldn't let him down. "This isn't over," I said, my voice low and determined. "Not by a long shot." As I left the house, Lila's words followed me. "It never is with you, is it, Marlo?" I got into my car, my mind racing. Something was very wrong in my son's home, and I had a sinking feeling that Lila was at the center of it all. One thing was certain, I would do whatever it took to protect Jonah, even if it meant tearing this family apart to save it. I couldn't shake the unease that clung to me after leaving Eli and Lila's house. Jonah's frightened face haunted me, his silent plea for help echoing in my mind. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. The next morning, I drove back to their neighborhood, parking a block away. I'd wait, watch, and hopefully catch a moment alone with Jonah. As luck would have it, I spotted him trudging towards the bus stop, shoulders slumped. I pulled up beside him. "Jonah, honey, get in." His head snapped up, relief flooding his features. He glanced around nervously before climbing in. "Grandma, what are you doing here?" "I couldn't stop worrying about you." Talk to me, sweetheart. What's going on at home? Jonah's eyes welled up.
Mom.
She's different when you're not around. She says awful things. Makes me feel worthless. My heart clenched. What kind of things, Jonah? He shook his head, fear creeping back into his expression. I can't. She'll know I told you. I reached out, squeezing his hand. I won't let anything happen to you, I promise. Just then, a car horn blared behind us. Lila's sleek sedan pulled up, her face a mask of fury behind the wheel. Jonah, get out of that car right now. I turned to my grandson. You don't have to go with her if you don't want to. Conflict warred on his face. Finally, he whispered, I'm sorry, Grandma, and slipped out of the car. Lila stormed over, grabbing Jonah's arm. What do you think you're doing, Marlo? Trying to kidnap my son? I was giving my grandson a ride to school, I said, keeping my voice level. Is that a crime now? Her eyes narrowed. Stay away from my family. You're poisoning Jonah's mind with your interference. The only poison here is coming from you, Lila, I shot back. She laughed, a brittle sound. Oh, Marlo, here to save the day again? Maybe if you spent less time meddling, you'd see things clearly. I watched helplessly as she dragged Jonah to her car. As they drove away, I caught a glimpse of his face in the rear window, eyes pleading for help. That evening, I called Eli. We need to talk about what's happening with Jonah. Mom, please, he sighed. Everything's fine. Lila told me about your little stunt this morning. You can't just show up and try to take Jonah. I wasn't taking him anywhere.
I'm worried about him, Eli.
Can't you see something's wrong? The only thing wrong is you overstepping, Mom. Lila's a good mother. She takes care of us. I bit back a frustrated scream. Open your eyes, Eli. Your son is suffering. I think you should take a step back, he said coldly. Give us some space. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, anger and fear warring inside me. How could Eli be so blind? Later that night, I jolted awake to my phone buzzing. A text from an unknown number. Grandma, please help. Mom's on a rampage. Dad won't do anything. I'm scared. My blood ran cold. I threw on clothes and raced to my car. As I sped towards Eli's house, my mind raced. What was I walking into? How bad had things gotten? I pulled up to see lights blazing in every window. Muffled shouting leaked through the walls. Taking a deep breath, I marched up to the front door and pounded on it. Eli yanked it open, his face a storm cloud. Mom, what are you doing here? I pushed past him. Where's Jonah? Lila appeared, her eyes wild. Get out of my house. Not without seeing my grandson, I said firmly. A crash from upstairs made us all freeze. Then Jonah's voice raw with tears. Just leave me alone. I locked eyes with Eli. Still think everything's fine? For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in my son's eyes. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't rest until Jonah was safe and this family's dark secrets were dragged into the light. The morning after the explosive confrontation at Eli's house, I found myself sitting across from Iris at our favorite cafe. My hands shook as I clutched my coffee mug, recounting the events of the past few days. I don't know what to do, Iris, I confessed. Jonah's clearly suffering, but Eli's in denial and Lila. She's like a fortress I can't breach. Iris leaned forward, her eyes filled with concern. Marlo, you need concrete evidence. Without it, it's just your word against Lila's. But how? Jonah's too scared to speak up and Eli won't listen. Iris paused, then said softly, Sometimes, Marlo, the truth hides in the silence. You need to listen to what's not being said. Her words struck a chord. What are you suggesting? I hate to say it, but have you considered recording what's happening in that house? I recoiled. You mean spy on them? That's illegal, isn't it? Iris shrugged. It's a gray area. But if it means protecting Jonah, the idea gnawed at me. It felt wrong, invasive. But then I remembered Jonah's terrified face, his desperate pleas for help. What choice did I have? I'll think about it, I said finally. That afternoon, I found myself parked outside Eli's house again. My heart raced as I watched Lila's car pull out of the driveway.
This was my chance.
I knocked on the door, plastering on a smile when Eli answered. Hi, honey. I thought I'd stop by and apologize for the other night. Can we talk? Eli hesitated, then nodded. Come in, Mom. As we sat in the living room, making awkward small talk, I discreetly pulled out the tiny audio recorder I'd bought that morning. My hands trembled as I activated it and slipped it behind a photo frame. Is Jonah home? I asked casually. He's upstairs doing homework, Eli replied. Mom, about last night? I cut him off. It's okay, Eli. I know I overstepped. I just worry, that's all. Our conversation meandered, neither of us addressing the elephant in the room. After about an hour, I made my excuses to leave. Do you mind if I use the bathroom before I go?
I asked.
Once upstairs, I slipped into Jonah's room. My grandson was hunched over his desk, not even looking up as I entered. Jonah? I whispered. He startled, turning to me with wide eyes. Grandma, what are you doing here? I crossed the room, pulling him into a tight hug. I'm trying to help you, sweetheart. I need you to trust me, okay? Jonah nodded against my shoulder. I quickly placed another recorder under his desk, praying he wouldn't find it. Stay strong, I murmured. I love you. As I left the house, guilt and determination warred within me. What I'd done felt wrong, but the alternative, leaving Jonah in that toxic environment, was unthinkable. The next few days were agony. I jumped every time my phone rang, half expecting Lila to have discovered the recorders. But nothing happened. Finally, a week later, I returned to retrieve them. My hands shook as I downloaded the audio files onto my computer. For hours, I listened. Most of it was mundane homework discussions, TV in the background. But then I heard it. Lila's voice, dripping with venom. You ungrateful little brat, she hissed. After everything I do for you, this is how you repay me? You're worthless, just like your father. Jonah's muffled sobs tore at my heart. I'm sorry, Mom. I'll do better, I promise. You think Grandma cares? Lila sneered. She doesn't. You're just a burden, Jonah. To everyone. I slammed the laptop shut, ball rising in my throat. The truth was worse than I'd imagined. Lila wasn't just cold or strict. She was emotionally abusive, systematically destroying Jonah's self-esteem. As the shock wore off, determination set in. I had my evidence now. It was time to confront this situation head-on, no matter the cost. Jonah's future depended on it. I picked up my phone, my finger hovering over Eli's number. This call would change everything, but I was ready. For Jonah, I'd move heaven and earth. And Lila? She was about to learn that hell hath no fury like a grandmother scorned. My hands trembled as I replayed the recordings for the third time. Each word from Lila's mouth was like a dagger to my heart, confirming my worst fears about Jonah's home life. You're nothing but a disappointment, Lila's voice hissed through the speakers. No wonder your father can't stand to be around you. Jonah's muffled sobs tore at my soul. I'm sorry, Mom. I'll do better, I promise. You think Grandma cares? Lila sneered. She doesn't. You're just a burden, Jonah. To everyone. I slammed the laptop shut, ball rising in my throat. The evidence was irrefutable. Lila wasn't just strict or cold. She was systematically destroying Jonah's self-esteem, isolating him from everyone who loved him. My phone buzzed. A text from Eli. Mom, can we talk? Something's not right with Jonah. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. Come over, I replied. An hour later, Eli sat across from me, his face etched with worry. I don't know what to do, Mom. Jonah's grades are slipping. He barely talks anymore. Lila says he's just being dramatic, but you know that's not true. I finished for him. Eli nodded, his eyes filling with tears. What's happening to my family? I reached for his hand. Eli, there's something you need to hear. With a heavy heart, I played him select portions of the recordings. Eli's face crumpled as he listened to Lila's venomous words and Jonah's broken responses. No, he whispered. This can't be real. Lila wouldn't. She loves Jonah. This is how she treats him when you're not around. I said gently. Eli, your son is suffering. Eli stood abruptly, pacing the room. How did you get these recordings? Did you spy on us? I met his gaze steadily. I did what I had to do to protect my grandson. This is illegal. Eli exploded. You had no right. I had every right. I shot back. Jonah called me begging for help. What was I supposed to do? Stand by and watch him be destroyed. Eli collapsed back into his chair, head in his hands. I can't believe this is happening. Believe it, I said firmly. Now the question is, what are you going to do about it? He looked up at me, conflict warring in his eyes. I need to talk to Lila. There has to be an explanation. Eli, I pleaded. You heard the tapes. There's no explaining that away. She's my wife, Mom. The mother of my child. I can't just. Can't just what? I interrupted. Protect your son? Be a father? Eli flinched as if I'd slapped him. That's not fair. No. What's not fair is what's happening to Jonah, I retorted. He needs you to step up, Eli. To be his advocate, his protector. And what if you're wrong? Eli challenged. What if this is all some misunderstanding? I leaned forward, my voice low and intense. Then prove me wrong.
But don't you dare ignore this, Eli.
Your son's life, his future, depends on what you do next. Eli stood, his face a mask of turmoil. I need time to think, to process all this. As he headed for the door, I called out, Eli, remember, Jonah is the victim here. Not Lila, not you, and certainly not me. Whatever you decide, put him first. After Eli left, I sank onto the couch, emotionally drained. I'd done what I set out to do, present the evidence to Eli. But would it be enough? Would he find the strength to confront Lila and protect Jonah? My phone chimed with a text from Jonah. Grandma, something's wrong. Dad came home, looking upset. Mom's yelling. I'm scared. My heart raced. Things were coming to a head, and fast. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. I would do whatever it took to keep Jonah safe, even if it meant tearing this family apart to save it. Jonah's text message sent me into a panic. I grabbed my keys and raced to Eli's house, my heart pounding with every mile. As I pulled up, I could hear shouting even from the driveway. I burst through the front door without knocking. The scene that greeted me was chaos. Lila was screaming at Eli, her face contorted with rage. Eli stood there, pale and shaken, while Jonah cowered in the corner, his hands over his ears. You believe that interfering old witch over your own wife. Lila shrieked. Lila, please, Eli pleaded. We need to talk about this calmly. Talk. There's nothing to talk about. Your mother has poisoned you against me. I stepped forward. That's enough, Lila. This ends now. She whirled on me, eyes blazing.
You.
This is all your fault. You've ruined everything. The only thing I've done is expose the truth, I said firmly. Eli, are you going to stand there and let this continue? Eli looked torn, his gaze darting between Lila and Jonah. I don't know what to believe anymore. Believe your son, I urged. Look at him, Eli. Really look. As if seeing Jonah for the first time, Eli's eyes widened. He took in his son's trembling form, the fear etched on his young face. Jonah, Eli said softly, taking a step towards him. Lila intercepted, grabbing Eli's arm. Don't you dare. He's just being dramatic, like always. Something in Eli snapped. He wrenched his arm free.
No, Lila.
This isn't drama. This is our son, terrified in his own home. Eli, open your eyes, I pleaded. Jonah needs you to be his father, not just Lila's husband. For a moment, the room was silent save for Jonah's muffled sobs. Then Eli straightened, a resolve I hadn't seen in years settling over his features. Jonah, go pack a bag, he said quietly. You're going to stay with Grandma for a while. Lila's face drained of color. What? You can't do that. I can and I am, Eli replied. We need some time apart, Lila. All of us. As Jonah scurried upstairs, Lila turned on me, her voice low and menacing. You'll regret this, Marlo. I'll make sure of it. I met her gaze steadily. The only thing I regret is not seeing through you sooner. Eli stepped between us. That's enough. Lila, we'll talk tomorrow. For now, I think it's best if you stay with your sister. Lila's mouth opened and closed, shock replacing anger. You're choosing them over me? Your own wife. I'm choosing our son, Eli said firmly. And it's about time I did. As Lila stormed out, slamming the door behind her, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. But I knew this was just the beginning. Jonah came downstairs, clutching a hastily packed duffel bag. His eyes were red-rimmed, but there was a glimmer of hope there too. Eli knelt in front of him. I'm so sorry, son. I should have seen what was happening. I should have protected you. Jonah threw his arms around his father, breaking down in sobs. Eli held him tight, his own tears falling freely. I watched them, my heart aching. We had a long road ahead, but for the first time in months, I felt hope. As we left the house, Eli turned to me. Mom, I don't know how to thank you. If you hadn't pushed, I squeezed his hand. You're doing the right thing now, Eli. That's what matters. Driving home with Jonah beside me and Eli following in his car, I knew we were at a turning point. The confrontation had been painful, but necessary. Now came the hard part, healing the wounds Lila had inflicted and rebuilding this fractured family. But looking at Jonah's peaceful face as he dozed in the passenger seat, I knew it was worth it. Whatever came next, we would face it together. And Lila? She was about to learn that messing with my family was the biggest mistake she'd ever made. The days following Jonah's move to my house were a whirlwind of emotions. Eli spent every free moment with us, his eyes constantly darting to Jonah as if afraid he might disappear. The change in Jonah was subtle but unmistakable. His shoulders gradually relaxed, his smile appeared more frequently, and he began to speak up without flinching. One evening, as Jonah was engrossed in a video game, Eli pulled me aside. Mom, I need to talk to Lila, he said, his voice low and strained. I can't keep avoiding this. I nodded, squeezing his arm. You're doing the right thing, Eli. Do you want me to come with you? He shook his head. No, I need to do this alone. But, can you keep Jonah here tonight? Just in case things get heated. My heart clenched at the implication, but I agreed. As Eli left, I couldn't shake the feeling that this confrontation would change everything. Hours passed with no word from Eli. Jonah had gone to bed, but I couldn't sleep, pacing the living room. Just after midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from Eli. It's over. Coming back now. Relief flooded through me, followed quickly by concern. What had happened? Eli arrived looking utterly drained, his eyes red-rimmed. Without a word, he collapsed onto the couch beside me. Eli? I prompted gently. What happened? He took a shuddering breath. It was... God, Mom, it was awful. I confronted Lila about everything, the emotional abuse, the manipulation. She denied it at first, then she just exploded. I listened in horror as Eli recounted the argument. Lila had raged, accusing him of betrayal, blaming me for poisoning their family. This is your fault, Eli. Eli mimicked Lila's words. Your mother has poisoned our family. She's turned you and Jonah against me. What did you say? I asked, dreading the answer. Eli's eyes met mine, a mix of pain and determination in them. I told her it was over, that I couldn't be with someone who hurt our son like that. I asked for a divorce. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. I reached out, pulling Eli into a tight embrace as he finally broke down, his body shaking with sobs. I failed him, Mom. Eli choked out. I should have seen it sooner. Protected him better. You're protecting him now, I assured him. That's what matters. As Eli's tears subsided, a new resolve seemed to settle over him. Lila threatened to fight for custody, he said. She said she'd ruin us all if I tried to take Jonah away from her. A chill ran down my spine. She won't win, I said firmly. We have evidence of her abuse. We'll fight this, Eli. Together. Eli nodded, exhaustion etched on his face. I know. It's just, how did we get here, Mom? How did I not see what was happening in my own home? I had no easy answers for him. Instead, I squeezed his hand. What matters now is moving forward.
Healing.
Both you and Jonah. As if summoned by our conversation, we heard a small voice from the stairs.
Dad.
Jonah stood there, looking small and vulnerable in his oversized pajamas. Eli opened his arms, and Jonah flew into them, clinging tightly. "It's okay, buddy," Eli murmured. "Everything's going to be okay now." Watching them, I felt a fierce protectiveness surge through me. Lila's threats echoed in my mind, but I pushed them aside. We had a long road ahead, custody battles, therapy, rebuilding trust. But in that moment, seeing Eli and Jonah together, I knew we'd get through it. As the night wore on, with Jonah nestled between Eli and me on the couch, I allowed myself a moment of cautious hope. The worst was over, but the real work of healing was just beginning. Whatever Lila threw at us next, we'd face it as a family, stronger and more united than ever before. The weeks following Eli's confrontation with Lila were a delicate balancing act. Jonah remained with me, while Eli split his time between work, visiting us, and dealing with the impending divorce proceedings. The change in Jonah was remarkable, like watching a flower slowly unfurl after a long winter. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, I heard laughter floating in from the backyard. Peering out the window, I saw Jonah and Eli engaged in an impromptu game of catch, their faces alight with genuine joy. It was a sight I hadn't witnessed in far too long. Later, after Eli had gone home and Jonah was getting ready for bed, I knocked gently on his door. "Can I come in, sweetheart?" Jonah nodded, patting the spot next to him on the bed. As I sat down, he leaned against me, a gesture that made my heart swell. "How are you feeling, Jonah?" I asked softly. "About everything that's happened?" He was quiet for a moment, fidgeting with the edge of his blanket. I feel different, Grandma. Like I can breathe again." His words echoed my thoughts from earlier. "That's good, honey. You know you're safe here, right?" Jonah nodded, then hesitated. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course, anything." He took a deep breath. "Mom, she used to tell me things. About you, about Dad. She said you didn't really love me, that I was just a burden to everyone." My heart clenched painfully, but I kept my voice steady.
Oh, Jonah.
That couldn't be further from the truth. You're Dad, and I love you more than anything in this world. "I know that now," Jonah said, his voice stronger. "Being here, with you and Dad, it's like I'm remembering who I really am. Does that make sense?" I hugged him tightly, blinking back tears. "It makes perfect sense, sweetheart." As the days passed, Jonah continued to open up, revealing more about the extent of Lila's manipulation. It was like watching a weight being lifted from his shoulders with each confession. Eli noticed the change too. One afternoon, as we watched Jonah laughing with a neighbor's kid, something he wouldn't have done weeks ago, Eli turned to me, his eyes shining. "Mom, I can't believe the difference," he said. "It's like I'm seeing the real Jonah for the first time in years." I squeezed his hand. "He's healing, Eli. You both are." Eli nodded, a mix of emotions playing across his face. "I've been thinking about the future, about what's best for Jonah. And," I prompted gently, "I want to fight for full custody," Eli said, his jaw set with determination. Seeing him here, with you, I realize now how toxic our home environment was. Jonah needs stability, love, support. He needs us. Pride swelled in my chest. "I'm with you every step of the way, Eli. We'll do whatever it takes to keep Jonah safe and happy." That evening, as we sat around the dinner table, a scene that was becoming beautifully routine, Jonah suddenly put down his fork. "Dad?" "Grandma," he said, his voice small but steady. I don't want to go back. To live with Mom, I mean, can I stay here? With both of you?" The vulnerability in his eyes nearly broke me. Eli reached out, clasping Jonah's hand. "That's exactly what we want to, buddy," he said. "We're going to make sure you're safe and happy no matter what." Jonah's face lit up with a smile that reached his eyes, a rare sight in recent years. "Really? You promise?" "We promise," I said firmly, including myself in this pact. As I looked at Eli and Jonah, united and healing, I felt a surge of determination. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Lila wouldn't give up without a fight, but we'd face it together. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to truly believe that everything would be okay. Jonah's words from earlier echoed in my mind. Grandma, I feel like I can finally breathe here. It was more than just a house. It was a sanctuary where love and healing could flourish. And I was determined to protect it at all costs. The courthouse loomed before us, an imposing structure that seemed to embody the weight of the moment. Eli stood beside me, his jaw set with determination. Jonah, sandwiched between us, gripped our hands tightly. Ready? I asked softly. Jonah nodded, his eyes reflecting a mix of fear and resolve. As long as you're both with me, we entered the building, the click of our shoes echoing in the marble hallway. Our lawyer met us at the courtroom door, her face serious but confident. Remember, she said, stick to the facts. The evidence is on our side. As we took our seats, I caught sight of Lila across the room. Her once immaculate appearance was disheveled, her eyes darting around wildly. For a moment, our gazes locked, and I saw a flicker of something, desperation, perhaps, or regret, before her mask of anger slammed back into place. The proceedings began, a blur of legal jargon and testimonies. Eli spoke eloquently about his awakening to Lila's abuse, his voice breaking as he recounted the changes he'd seen in Jonah. When it was Jonah's turn to speak, my heart swelled with pride at his courage. Living with my mom was like drowning, Jonah said, his voice small but steady. But now, with Dad and Grandma, I can breathe again. I feel safe. I feel loved. Lila's outburst came suddenly, her shrill voice cutting through the courtroom. This is all lies. They've turned my son against me. Marlo has poisoned our family. As the judge called for order, I saw the last of Lila's support crumble. Her own sister, seated in the gallery, shook her head in dismay, finally seeing Lila for who she truly was. The judge's ruling came swiftly. Full custody to Eli, with supervised visitation for Lila pending completion of therapy and parenting classes. As the gavel fell, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. We had won. Outside the courthouse, Jonah threw his arms around Eli and me, tears streaming down his face. We did it, he whispered. We're really a family now. Eli knelt down, looking Jonah in the eye. We've always been a family, buddy. Now we just get to be the best version of ourselves. As we walked to the car, I spotted Iris waiting for us, a broad smile on her face. She hugged me tightly, whispering, I'm so proud of you, Marlo. You fought for what matters most. That evening, as we sat around my dining room table, now our dining room table, I looked at the faces of my son and grandson. There were still shadows in their eyes, scars that would take time to heal. But there was also hope and love and the promise of a brighter future. Eli raised his glass in a toast. To new beginnings, he said. And to the strongest woman I know, my mom, who taught me what it really means to fight for family. I felt tears prick my eyes as Jonah added, and to never giving up, even when things seem impossible. As we clinked our glasses together, I was struck by the truth of Jonah's words. We had faced seemingly insurmountable odds, but our love and determination had seen us through. Later, as I tucked Jonah into bed, a nightly ritual I now treasured, he looked up at me with eyes full of trust. Grandma, he said softly, do you think Mom will ever change? I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words carefully. I don't know, sweetheart. But what I do know is that you are safe and loved and surrounded by people who will always protect you. Jonah nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. I know. Sometimes the hardest truths lead to the strongest bonds, right? I blinked back tears, recognizing my own words reflected back at me. That's right, my brave boy.
And our bond?
It's unbreakable. As I closed Jonah's door, I found Eli waiting in the hallway. Without a word, he pulled me into a tight embrace. We stood there, holding each other, two generations united by love and the shared experience of overcoming adversity. Our family had been tested, broken, and reforged. We emerged stronger, our bonds deeper than ever before. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew we would face them together, a family bound not just by blood, but by choice, resilience, and unwavering love.